We use hit points in games all the time, but where exactly do hit points come from? And what do they mean for us using them in games? How can we use them to signal the most to the player while doing the least effort on our part to explain? So these are questions that I have been thinking about a lot over my game design and game making career. And today I want to share the answers to these questions and basically tell you about a way that I found to think about hit points to make them do as much of the heavy lifting as possible for you when you're designing your own content. So let's knock out the first question, which is, where do hit points come from? How do we come up with this concept of hit points and why do they exist in the first place? Well, hit points, as they as the name suggests, come from hits, right? And hits in attacks. So if one person attacks another person with, let's say, a knife, the expectation is the person who got stabbed will die, right? Now I know that not everybody will die, and it doesn't mean that just because you'd stabbed once, you automatically die. But if you've seen movies or have been hurt yourself in any sort of accident, basically, you see that as soon as a serious injury happens to you, if you get stabbed by something or you get punched really hard or I don't know, you bump against something, the pain is so sudden for normal, everyday, standard, average people that it's debilitating. So that sort of pain is enough to basically make you useless. Now, does that mean that every injury is debilitating? Of course not. But thinking of it in that context, that where one serious stab, one serious smack with a club or something or a piece of wood is debilitating or fatal, is where this concept that one hit equals one kill comes from. But remember, we're talking about normal people here, not trained fighters, not um, expert athletes or anything like that, just standard, plain old average people. So if one person only takes one normal hit to down, then see what happens when I say that another person has 10 hit points. So in this context, you have no other knowledge of these two people, just that one has 10, one hit point and the other has 10. So that automatically makes you think in a mathematical way. So without even knowing if it's actually true, you think that one person is 10 times stronger than the other, or 10 times more durable, or 10 times better in some way. So this is a hint for you for the power that these numbers carry. They tell a story without you ever having to explain it. So here, just by adding one more zero, we created the appearance that this person is 10 times stronger without explaining his training or his arms or his armor or anything like that, just by showing a number. And I'm sure you've experienced it yourself in video games when you see someone who is uh, way stronger than you, has way more hit points than your character, and you automatically assume that that enemy must be super strong, right? So, and the next part is if you see someone even stronger. So here, already something weird happens. If you know that a standard character has one hit point, and you find someone who has 100 hit points, then you start to question reality a little bit. So you think that this one person, if he got hit once properly, that would be enough. That would be enough to make him fall down. But this person can take 100 hits. Now we can imagine somebody taking a few hits and still standing, especially if he's a, I don't know, a boxer or some seasoned athlete or something. But 100 is a little bit pushing it. And this is the second thing that we can use in our game. So imagine that this entity with 100 hit points was not human. So if it was a robot or a vehicle or a monster or a dragon or something like that, then you can see how the 100 hit points or more for that case also communicate something. So if the entity with 100 hit points was a dragon, or if the dragon had 1,000 hit points, then it's already pretty believable that that crazy monster is way, way, way stronger than your average human character. And that is exactly the uh, ability that these numbers have for telling a story, even without having to explain why the dragon is so strong and how did he get so strong and so on. So the reason why I stress this so much is because in games, often you start the game and your character already has 3,950 hit points. And then the first enemy you meet has 70,000 hit points. And your weapons do, I don't know, 10,000 damage per hit. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Many games do this. It's functional. The math checks out at the end of the day. It's all fine. So, what is the benefit that can be had here by preserving more, let's say, normal relationships between hit points and characters? It's that it saves you the explaining, which is one big benefit, because in games we often have to explain lots of things like how to play the game, what everything is, and so on. And the other big benefit is that it gives you an intuitive understanding about all the other things you see around you. So if you see if the game is well balanced in this sense, where a weak human would only have one hit point and it would go up and it would scale based on that, but it still maintains that way of thinking. So if you saw someone with 32 hit points, you would think, okay, that's a pretty seasoned fighter already. Um, then it gives the player a much more intuitive understanding of the world, and suddenly everything makes sense. So, for example, if you see a sword that has one attack power, which means it deals one damage per hit, you think, okay, that's a standard sword. If you see a sword that has five, then there's no calculation you need to make. There's no conversion you have to make in your mind as a player to understand this. You see it and you think, okay, so since this has five times the hit points of a standard character, you know pretty much how strong it is. While if the game system is such that all the entities have arbitrary hit point values, and some human characters have 70,000 hit points and others have 150,000 hit points, already the player's mind starts to disjoin from the fact that these hit points track back to the original, single hit point, right? It just makes it way less intuitive for the player to understand both the power of enemies and the power of weapons. And then your mind is constantly making conversions and adding and multiplying and dividing to see if what you're seeing is strong or weak, basically. So that's the topic I wanted to share today. I think it's important because numbers have the power to tell a story all on their own. And we see numbers in all sorts of areas in video games. And hit points are perhaps the most basic place where we expect to see numbers. So I discovered that by doing this and thinking of hit points this way, not only you make your job easier as a game designer because everything is relatable to real life, or at least this very basic one hit point example, but you save yourself a ton of effort communicating to the player what everything is and what everything means. Anyway, that's it for today. If you also have any insights about using numbers in games or how to use hit points, I'll be very much looking forward to reading about it in the comments. Thank you so much for your time. And as always, have fun.